Welcome to How to Develop a Five-Year Plan. My name is Doug Gannon, and I'll be the moderator this morning. I have only one announcement now. Well, actually, I'll get it another one. We have some GFOA wine and beer glasses. I think they're on the way out. Please take one. Standard reminder, please, everybody, turn off or mute your phone. Like I said, this is how to develop a five-year plan, a discussion on strategies and techniques to help you plan for the development of yourself and your staff. We'll be hearing from Rita Friedman today. Rita is a coach, speaker, and consultant focused on helping professionals strategically navigate career transitions. She works with clients on defining their concepts of success, identifying and creating opportunities, preparing job search tools, and managing messy situations. She also facilitates workshops and presentations for employers and organizations that are committed to engaging and developing their talent. In addition to her work with PhillyCareerCoach.com, Rita has appeared on television and frequently contributes to national newspapers and magazines as an expert. Some of the topics she is frequently quoted on include life-work balance, career planning, resumes, networking, job searches, the interview process, salary negotiation, overcoming barriers to employment, and improving job satisfaction. She earned her BA in English and philosophy from the University of Albany and is a certified job and career transition coach, certified job and career development coach, certified Myers-Briggs type indicator practitioner, and certified life coach. Please give a warm welcome to Rita Friedman.
Hi. Hi, I'm Rita Friedman, and I'm excited to talk about developing a five-year career plan. And I'm especially excited because if there's anyone who can get on board with planning and tracking and analyzing really complicated and messy details, it's a room full of government finance officers. In my practice as a career coach and consultant, I see my clients dramatically improve their work satisfaction when they adopt a strategic and organized approach to career planning. It sounds so obvious, but it's amazing how the same person who would spend weeks reading restaurant reviews and comparing hotels in preparation for a 5-day trip, or who would do exhaustive comparative research when they're thinking about buying a used car, wouldn't even think to spend a handful of hours on strategic career planning that could really change their life. And I get it. Career planning isn't transactional. It isn't something you do one time. It isn't something you can set and forget. It's a lot of work in and of itself, or it can feel that way. It means that you're asking difficult, deep questions, taking control of your future, and setting up the potential to be recognized as a huge failure. But when my clients take the time to examine what they want, translate their desires into goals, do some research, and make an outline for themselves, I see them find and create opportunities and possibilities they never would have imagined if they were just going with the flow. There you go. So first we'll look at the big question. What do you want? We'll talk about how you can unpack this deep existential question of who you are and what's important to you and what you're afraid of. Then we'll take those findings and examine them through a practical 5-year lens, breaking down the specifics of what you want to be doing 5 years from now, what it looks like, and what you need to do to get there. We'll talk about how to go about researching your career options and how to lay out what you need versus what you have and build out a checklist for you to focus on. We'll talk about networking and how to do authentic, productive networking as you're doing all these other things. And we'll talk about how you can break that down into more manageable yearly goals. Finally, we'll talk about how you can schedule checkpoints for yourself to evaluate your progress and assess how it's going. Let's do it. There we go. So if you can distill the complex, amorphous concepts of what you actually want into a tidy summary, you're already way ahead of the game. You don't need to spell out every detail, but we want to establish a target, a clear definition of what it is you want so that you can use that as a reference point to work backwards from, to figure out your priorities and to be able to recognize when you're going off track. You'll better be able to see that if the goal shifts or changes drastically over time, and why it's changing, what the factors are that lead to your new target. As you go through the career planning process, it's really important to create documentation for yourself, with notes to reference later and markers to revisit as you go. I think it makes sense to start by writing down everything that might start swirling in your head when you think about what you want to do. In the beginning of your process, you're starting by documenting what you already know and broadly classifying that information. These notes will be useful when you start getting into more specific detail and establishing mini goals. By first coming up with what you think you want, and then looking at what's actually out there, you will better be able to see how a position works for you, instead of starting off with looking at what's in front of you and determining how you can adapt yourself to fit a mold. Some of it is about control, about knowing what you want, and then creating a position for yourself or creating opportunities to better serve your own needs. You'll be able to see what's missing from a job opening or an opportunity in front of you and what you would want to bring to the role or what you could do outside of the role to make sure you're scratching all your itches. Another reason I like to start with what you want and then look outwards is to be able to give yourself a reality check. If you already have a clear understanding of what it is that you want, and you go out there and you see that what you thought would be a great fit actually doesn't check off enough boxes or scratch enough itches, or if you find your expectations are way off, maybe you need to revisit or reapproach the situation. If you just start with what's already out there and what's readily available to you, it's too easy to be complacent, or to accept things as they are, or to overlook the lack of something that's important to you. You can always find new things out there in the world that you didn't consider, or that you had no awareness of until it pops up right in front of your nose, and then you can take the additional piece and choose to add it to your list. It's easy to go with the flow, and it can be tempting, but going with the flow is often only easy in the beginning, and one day you wake up and realize you're just adrift, or you're moving very quickly towards something you don't want. It's also easy to find a comfortable spot and become complacent. And sometimes you like the work you do and the people you work with, and it's fine. Or you trust that someone is watching out for you. And then it seems suddenly years have gone by, you've stagnated, or you've outgrown your role, and fine isn't very satisfying. But you weren't actively managing your own career, and you haven't laid the groundwork for making a move, so you feel doubly stuck. So when you start thinking about it, some examples of the things you might consider when you're trying to lay out what you want from your career could include how fast you should be moving at this point in your career, the nature of the work that you can easily lose yourself in, where you want to actually go every day, and the things that just make you, you. When I talk about career progression, I'm essentially talking about what can be reduced to a resume. Your career progression is that mostly chronological record of your job titles. It's the responsibilities and the scope of responsibility in a given position, and how long you spend in a job before moving on to the next job, or how long you spend doing one type of job before you're ready to move on to the next level. In the early part of your career, you're testing out different environments, and you're trying different responsibilities, and you're sticking your toes into different ponds and sort of feeling what feels right. In those first jobs, you're building up a very general skill set and sort of rounding out your experience. And then you start to move from this broad-based skill set into having more focus. You're carving out your niche, you're building your reputation, you're getting recognized for being good at specific things, and you might find that whenever people have a certain type of question, they're coming to you. As your career progresses and you become an expert in your field, that's when you get to have a little bit more control, and you get to have a little more leverage when you're seeking out new opportunities because you have more to offer. You're finding your competitive edge and growing it and capitalizing on it, and you're getting in your lane and you're driving it. And then at some point, you probably turn some of your focus to other related things that you can also acquire a mastery of. And ultimately, hopefully, you get to a point where you've really mastered not just one narrow and deep niche, but you have deep knowledge of an entire area of interwoven and complementary skills. There's also the pace of progression to consider. In the earlier phases of your career, you'll grow quickly, and you'll constantly be learning new things. And then, as you advance in your career, the progress will often be incremental, or deep instead of broad. The same way that you expect to see a small child learning something new every day and picking things up really quickly, but then you're really not surprised when you see your middle-aged friend and he's exactly the same as he was in 2014. And that's kind of what happens in your career. You know, in your first few jobs, you hope to master those lower-level skills and quickly move up so you don't have to do them anymore. Lower-level skills can be the building blocks for more advanced roles, so don't totally shrug them off as responsibilities you can't wait to shed, but some of it is grunt work, and there's a reason it's considered a lower-level job. And then as you get deeper into your path, you hope to have the time and the resources and the staff support to pull off bigger accomplishments. And you want to have the expertise to be trusted with really big and valuable and meaningful work. And then as you progress further into your career, you'll want to be able to go deeper and to do the type of work that not everyone could do. And you're not so much of a reasonably useful warm body, you're more of a resource, and you're using more brain power. And the work is probably more satisfying. And it's sort of that difference between figuring out how to do a mail merge and coming up with new procurement strategies that will save your city tens of thousands of dollars. And how much responsibility you're ready for and how much time you want to be in a given role depend on a lot of other moving parts. And so your goal doesn't need to be a different job than the one you currently have. Your 5-year goal might be to achieve a certain fund balance or to improve your city's financial rating or to transform the way decisions are made by using data analytics, or you might really want to win an award for being the most financially responsible city in the world. You might already be in your dream job and spending the next 5 years figuring out how to do it better and better. But even if you want to be right where you are now in 5 years, you should treat it as a destination, as a goal in its own right. And you should be looking at what you want to have accomplished by staying in your role, looking for the value that you're still bringing, how you're increasing your worth, making a contribution, and preparing for whatever comes next. As far as motivated skills go, in thinking about how to direct the trajectory of your career, one of the core considerations should be how to incorporate your motivated skills into the bulk of your work. You could probably very easily rattle off dozens of skills that you have, of things that you can do, of things that you can do well. But your motivated skills are another class of skill. They're that creme de la creme. They're the pieces that you really want to turn your attention and your intention toward. So your motivated skills are the things that you're good at, that you enjoy doing. And so, just because you're good at doing payroll doesn't mean you like doing payroll, right? When you're looking to pinpoint your motivated skills, you're asking yourself, what are the types of problems that I like to solve? And you're thinking about the things that you're really proud of having done, the project that kept you awake at night in that good way, where you were just like so eager to find the answer and to solve it, and finally you do it and it's great. Not the type of thing that keeps you awake at night because you hate it so much. And so you're not thinking about that long to-do list of tasks that you would procrastinate on or that you really don't look forward to doing. even if those are things that you happen to be good at doing. And I often see people getting bogged down trying to embrace or promote everything they can do. But it isn't about trying to cover everything. It's really about focusing on the work that engages you, about the work that energizes you, about the work that's worth your time. Focusing on your motivated skills will help propel your career forward and will help you get to that next level where you're not a jack of all trades or someone who can do a lot of diverse things, but instead you're valued for the work you're good at and the work you enjoy, which is a narrower focus, the types of things you can really throw yourself into. And of course, because you're passionate about that work, because you take pride in this motivated skill set, because you care about it, it'll show, and people will see how you really shine in that role. Sometimes what can happen if you aren't careful is that you're doing lots of things. You're doing this broad-based work, maybe earlier in your career, and maybe you happen to be really good at doing payroll. But maybe you're just as good or even better at finding grant opportunities. But payroll happens to be what's more urgent in the moment in your office, and you're good at it. And then as a reward for being good at it, you get more of it. And then you get sucked into it because you're good at it and you know it's important. And then you get more payroll-related responsibilities and more. And then one day you wake up and you can't figure out why you're miserable. You're good at your job, so why aren't you happy with your job? It's because you're using your skills, but not your motivated skills. You're not doing the work that you value, even though the work itself has value. And when you think about what you love about your job, it can be big picture, it can be small scale, to find the areas you want to focus on at any given point. Do you get a thrill out of creating a pivot table? Or maybe it's that more creative problem solving or strategy part of the job. Maybe it's not the actual act of writing a cost estimate, but it's being involved with the city and being a force behind cultural development or feeling that you're serving a public good or you're supporting city planning. And so motivated skills are that type of work that you enjoy doing. It's not just what comes naturally, but also what you enjoy working hard on. The skills you rely on when you're working on your most exciting and engaging challenges. And your aim here is to isolate your motivated skills so that you can plan your career around the type of work that you want to be doing. When you imagine being in a job you love, where you're using your motivated skills and you're being challenged, you probably also have some image of what that looks like. It might be vague or it might just be a fragment, but there's probably something in there that you already know. You might have an idea of what an ideal commute could be. Do you like a small office or do you want to be in a larger team? Do you like working in a multi-generational environment? Or are you looking for more mature colleagues? Or are you looking to get around some younger blood? Everybody has all these different ideas of what would make a workplace better or more exciting. And I've had a number of clients whose absolute number one deal breaker is a lack of natural light. Whatever that thing is that go with that and start writing that down. And so when you're thinking about what makes for a great environment, you don't need to narrow things down yet. You might very well enjoy being in one town or another, or you might work equally well in a small office or a medium-sized office. In these first stages of planning, you're gathering information and you don't need to choose between theoretical environments. It's just about becoming conscious of what you want and taking notes for yourself. This is also a good time to consider what's important to you in terms of professional ambitions and life-work balance. And what do you hope to achieve with your work? How much extra time are you comfortable putting in? Are you okay with working some nights and weekends? What kind of money or benefits are you looking for at this point in your career? If retirement's on the horizon, are you looking at consulting or taking a part-time job? And then also under this header of personal values, there's that question of what you're passionate about. What are the actual problems that you're eager to solve? What types of programs do you really want to create or build upon? And write down all of these things. Then later you'll be able to look at the whole picture before you start dissecting it. And again, don't feel like you need to dismiss any conflicting ideas yet. But as soon as we start laying out what we want, of course, we also start thinking about why it might not work out and all of the asterisks and all of the buts. And so we just want to be sure we address some of these concerns head on right away. And so one thing to think about when you're planning a career move or you're just thinking about how you want the next 5 years to unfold, we start thinking about what are those predictable life events that might be coming up. You know, maybe you're going to have young children at home, or maybe you have kids going off to college. Maybe you're going to need to care for an aging parent, or maybe you're going to need just more flexibility in general. You know, and so depending on where you are and what's happening, maybe if you're getting ready for retirement or your spouse is going to go back to school, that can also really affect what you're trying to do with your career at that time. And so you want to think about what would that new life mean for you or your family, and what will be some of the things that you'll need from your job at that point, and how will your changing personal life affect your career path. And, you know, especially now that we live so long and we work for so long and for so many years, there'll be times when it makes sense to aggressively focus on your career, on taking charge, on building up your position, or growing out your skills. And there'll be times where you'll be really happy to put in the extra hours or take on the extra work. And then there'll be times where your career isn't or shouldn't be your focus. And if you're the primary caregiver for little kids or another family member, you might need to spend some time not pushing for career advancement. It might be the right time to take a step back, or at least not to jump forward. And you might need your energy, physical and emotional, for your home life. And in these periods, sometimes just maintaining is the goal. Or sometimes your home life is so hectic and it's so demanding of your time and your energy in ways that don't necessarily use your motivated skills. And you could be really happy to have that distraction of work, to be able to go to the office and throw yourself into it. And maybe you want to be pushed professionally because then you get to use your motivated skills. And it's a welcome responsibility. You might not know right now how you will react when a major life event actually happens, but you can start thinking about the predictable future and how it may impact your career transitions. If you're planning on staying in your current workplace, you want to think about what are some of the things that you know are coming, who's going to be retiring, who's already looking for another job or probably will be moving on soon. You know, you want to think about who wants to take your job and how things are just changing internally, what's happening in the political climate. You want to think about how is your town going to change over the next 5 years and how that's going to affect the work that you do. How will the resources that you have access to change? And how will the needs of the city change with an aging population, or maybe there's a sudden influx of yuppies, or there's just something going on that's shaking things up. And if you can keep an eye out for that and think about how that would affect what you're doing day to day, those are really important considerations to list and to include for now also. But usually when you think about making any kind of change, you know, any kind of big change and a career change, you know, usually you have that like instant gut resistance feeling. And you kind of want to grab that and you say like, why are you resistant? And what are those fears? What are the costs? What might get in your way? What's impractical about what you want? And you'll write down the things that could give you pause and the things that you're uncomfortable with. And then you might also have some ideas about other possibilities. Now that your primary areas of interest and your motivated skills and the work that you care about is coming into focus, there might be these other ideas off on the periphery of other things you could be doing, some other interests you have. And so you want to start thinking about that, about what are your other interests, what else could you imagine yourself doing, what would a plan B look like? And, you know, in the notes for your actual plan, you can leave a lot of room here and come back to it later. I think as you go farther into the process and you start doing some more of the networking and the informational interviewing that we'll be talking about, then those things become more apparent than they might be if you're just sitting around trying to think of it yourself. But so, you know, you're probably going to come across things that you're curious about, and you could just leave room to build that in. At this point, you basically have a bunch of lists of things you want and things you don't want. And either you already have a good idea of where you hope to be, or it's starting to come together. And these lists will form the base for the next step in building out a plan. You're going to do market research and find real-world examples that align with what you think you want. And I like starting with the low-hanging fruit. I think you want to just get into the swing of things, and so I often suggest that clients start just by going through job postings. See what different places are saying they want. At this phase, you're not actually looking for jobs that you're going to apply for right now, and so you don't need to limit your search to what's practical. You're just sort of looking to find postings that sound like they match up with what you want and see what they're saying a successful candidate should have. And these job postings you're reading through might be indicative of the type of job you think you want, and they can provide some knowledge, but this is really low-hanging fruit, and it's a low-key, really passive start. Reading through those job postings, you're probably not going to see much that pops out at you. They're going to be pretty dry and only rarely specific. So then the next step up would be to start reading bios or LinkedIn profiles and looking at actual people who have done the work that you're hoping to do. And once you start doing that and you actually look at real people, then you'll start to find that juicier detail and more specific examples of how a person builds that type of career that you want to build. So maybe you'll find an example of a CFO who becomes a city manager, or you're going to find an auditor who plays guitar in a band at night. And you don't have to find someone who's perfect or someone who's an exact match. It doesn't have to be an example of everything you've always wanted. But you're looking for some inspiration here. And you're looking to find someone who has a lot of the right pieces, or at least enough of the right pieces. And you want to look at their path to where they are and find the pieces to emulate, the pieces that maybe didn't work well for them. Or maybe look at what worked well for them but wouldn't be right for you. And you're just sort of looking at how did they get there and what do they have that stands out. You're looking to see who successful people associate with and what organizations they join and what credentials they carry. And you're looking for synergies and uniqueness here. And then you'll get to the interactive part. And so when you're doing career planning, it's not just the skills and experience that you want to incorporate into the plan. It's also finding the people who can help you get where you want to go. And a lot of it really is who you know. So now you've done some preliminary research on actual people. You've been making notes about what stands out, why these people were worth your time. And you can take what you find, those pieces that piqued your interest, and you can start launching these meaningful and authentic conversations. Or you could conduct more formal informational interviews. And this is really some of the best networking that you can do. Once you're starting to talk to somebody about these things that you're really passionate about and they're really passionate about, that's when, it gets interesting. And so through these conversations, you get to build these professional relationships with people you would never otherwise come in contact with. And networking's a long game. It's like that tree that you should have planted 10 years ago. So you'll be having these conversations with people about what they love, about their success. You'll be turning to them for advice. And people love talking about what they love and their success and giving advice. And, there are just so many benefits to belonging to an organization like this. You look here at everybody who's here, it's just such a rich network of people and connections and people who are really deep knowledge about things they're really excited about. And so you can just connect with these people right here. So when you're doing these informational interviews, or you're talking to people who have been there and done that, you're asking them about the work they do, what they like about it, what they dislike, what they were surprised by, or what they wish they had known before they got into it. You want to ask them how they see their role changing in the coming years and how they got to where they are. Is there a book or is there a class that they would recommend? But the question that you should be asking everybody all the time is, who else should I talk to? And this is really key, right? This is how you get to have that next conversation and how you get to dig deeper than if you were only accessing those first-degree connections. It's not going to some function and trading business cards with someone whose name you're going to forget instantly. It's really deep and it's really fun. So this can lead to these lasting relationships and possibly a person who you can come to over and over again and who can help you grow and who wants to help you grow because they get it. There's a perception that mentors are for people who are very junior in their career, And while that may often be the case, there's a lot to be said for having an ally throughout your career, wherever you are. When you're having these conversations, you're establishing your seriousness and your commitment, and you're showing, instead of telling, that you really want this thing, and that you're not chasing some fantasy of what a job could be, but you're facing it head on. And the type of person who has had a truly successful career is someone who has also worked for it, who went above and beyond, and they may see that in you. And that's the relationship, and that's someone who will not only encourage you and guide you, but who can also advocate for you and use their position to help you. And we'll talk a little more about the people who can help you achieve your goals when we dig into the 5-year outline. But for now, we'll move on to the piece about requesting feedback. And this is possibly the hardest piece, but it's a really important one. You know, you need some outside perspective, but not too far outside. You want to talk to people who know your work and what they think of your goals, and you want to know, why do you think that I would be good at this? Or what do you think I need to work on? And what kind of constructive advice do you have, being this person who knows me and who knows the way I work and what I do? And you want to sort of take note of, when you're getting that feedback, what surprises you about the feedback? What was really hard for you to hear? What were you happy to hear? What did you expect? And how far off was your guess from what you would hear from what you actually get? And you also want to think about who you want to have these conversations with and who you don't want to have them with and why. And sometimes, you know, the worst ones are the best ones, right? All right. So now we can actually talk about a 5-year goal, right? Now you have a ton of information, these things you already knew about yourself, the things that you found to investigate further when you're examining those real-world examples of appealing positions and people's career paths. And you have that insight from people who've done exactly what you're trying to do. You have the feedback from people who know your work. And so you can really start looking ahead. You know, and I say, like, remember this 5-year goal is a checkpoint. And unless you plan on being dead in 5 years and a day, it's not a terminal destination, you know. And so we're going to break this down, and we're going to look at, how do you describe the position? What are the requirements for the position? What do you need that you don't already have? How will you get what you need? Who can help you? And where to go from there. And you want to be specific, but remember, this career plan, it's not a contract, it's a plan, and things change, and you can make different decisions along the way, and you can redirect. But the more specific you can be about what you want and why you want it, the easier it will be to see related opportunities and to evaluate your options. And that's not to say it needs to be comprehensive. You don't need all the answers, and there are so many times where you have to accept there are going to be these unknowns. But so first, let's talk about, how do you describe this position? You know, what's the nature of the work, and how are you spending most of your time? What types of projects do you get to take on? What are you excited about being able to do? You know, maybe is your work focused on implementing best practices, or are you spending more time on strategy and planning? And, you know, is your work highly analytical? What's the detail of this job that's different from the job you have now, this place that you're trying to get to? How are those balances shifting? I find a lot of time that when people talk about their careers, even if they don't know what they want, they often know what they don't want. And so that's also a really good starting point. You know, what are the things that you don't want to be responsible for anymore 5 years from now, or you want to have a lot less responsibility for? You know, and you're thinking about, what's that environment that you're in? Are you working mostly independently? Or are you working really closely with a team? Are you training people? Are you actively managing people? And what's the purpose of your work? If you do this job well, who's going to benefit from it? And what will be achieved and how? And so to start getting a little more specific, you know, let's say maybe there's a town that you love because it has amazing river views and great small businesses, and you just think it's really cute, and you have this vision for how you could ultimately improve the infrastructure. And whenever you have dinner in this town, you think about what you could do to encourage growth, and you could imagine building partnerships that would spark new investments, and maybe you love relying on a managerial skill set and negotiating contracts. And you could really picture yourself as the CFO. So let's start looking at an actual example. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so you're essentially building out an imaginary, aspirational job description, and it's largely informed by the research you're doing and the conversations you're having. And so, you're thinking, what credentials are required? What credentials are preferred? And what specific technical skills or areas of knowledge are required? And, what are the experiences someone needs to succeed in this role? And what's that right level of professional equity? What are the expectations there? So let's say you're currently in a relatively quiet, relatively small town in South Jersey, and you're thinking about this town you love and how you'd like to be the CFO of this town. And it's diverse, it's affluent, you could be near the city, and you can have resources to play around with. You could shape the budgets to address some of the concerns that you want to focus on. And it's not just the next step up from where you are now. It's going to take some directed effort to position yourself to compete. So let's lay out the qualifications of a successful CFO, and just sort of starting with the credentials, right? What are the actual credentials that you'll need to get in the door? And you know this already, and you know it from your research and from informational interviewing, but so, you're gonna need that bachelor's degree that you already have in accounting, business, finance, economics. You'll need a master's in business or public administration. You'll be a CMFO, and you're probably a CPA. And then there are probably some other certifications that you should have. You should probably be a qualified purchasing agent and a certified tax collector. And then you really want to think, okay, what's going above and beyond that? And what other specific training or certifications would be that icing on the CFO cake? And what does this specific town really deserve? The next one's also pretty straightforward. You're just thinking about what are the technical skills. You'll need strong Excel skills, but maybe you need to have a better mastery of financial management solutions or reporting tools to just be even more competitive. And then you'll want to think about what areas of expertise will this position be looking for? What are some of the keywords that you're going to see pop up in job descriptions? And what do you need to be good at in order to be good at this job? What will you want to have had experience with before you get the position? And then you'll probably come up with a bunch of things like this. You'll come up with a bunch of keywords and think about you need municipal budget experience and capital budgets and experience dealing with ordinances and, doing cost-benefit analysis and auditing. But you want to get really specific here. So how much expertise and how much experience should you have in these different areas? And what size budgets do you want to be working with 5 years from now? And what would best prepare you for that experience? What kinds of capital projects should you already have been involved with? What are the kinds of issues that you should have already gotten some experience resolving? And how much should one area of knowledge be emphasized over another area? And so this is a good time to check back on those motivated skills and to look at what you love doing and how it fits in with this job. And so talking about experience, maybe you see similar jobs asking for 5 years of relevant experience, but you'll want to consider whether that number of years of work experience that's being advertised is the minimum requirement. And is that realistic? Is 5 years of experience really enough professional equity to deserve the respect of your colleagues and your subordinates? Most people don't really want to go into a job where they just meet those minimum qualifications. Especially in an example like this. But it also probably depends on, how deep into your career path you are and what type of career progression makes sense and the level of work you're ready for. Some of the jobs are best when you just meet the minimum requirements. But it's not just the amount of experience, it's the quality of experience. And you can't just knock out some arbitrary number of years of experience and actually be ready. You have to be doing that deep and motivated work that's going to really prepare you to succeed. And so, maybe you want to look at other things that could complement those core job functions, right? And so let's take all this stuff, we'll start putting it together into a little snapshot, and then we're going to take inventory to assess what you have and what you need. And at this point, it really does just look sort of like a job posting, but you also have these much deeper and more specific notes that you've built out of the requirements. And so now you have this thing, and you just kind of go through it and start crossing off what you already have. You're taking inventory, you're looking at what you need that you don't have or what you need deeper experience with. And then you just sort of go through that, look at those types of things. And so this next step is really reviewing what's left and building out the qualifications. And you don't have to come up with a list of things that will all be completed in 5 years. It could be things that are in progress. You know, if you always wanted to go back and get another master's degree, maybe 5 years from now you want to be almost done with it. So you have this very clear outline, and it's not just you comparing yourself to some job you posted that you found online, but it's a snapshot comparing you to your goals. And then it becomes so much easier to look at this crisp picture of where you want to be and come up with a path to get there and really build out an actionable plan. And so then you're going to think about, okay, how do you get that? You know, so let's drill down and lay out some of the steps to work towards these things. And how will you get that stuff? So you're going to think about the people you've been talking to about your plan, or who you know through your network, and what did they do, and what classes you should be taking, and how can you take advantage of the right type of continuing education, and you know, when is that class on purchasing? And so what kinds of projects can you take on in your current role, and what can help you get to that next level of proficiency? And what other positions could be a good leap pad to get where you want to go? And also, what are those external experiences that could really benefit you? You know, maybe you should be serving on the board of a nonprofit, and maybe you should be the chair of the Chamber of Commerce, like Economic Development Council, or you should be working with some community organizations, or volunteering, or is there some place you can go and get more managerial skills, new programs you should be learning? And so again, you're just starting by taking lots of notes, and then you can go through them and get rid of the things that don't really make sense for you. And we're always asking, who can help you? You're thinking back to that market research, those relationships that you've built and people who gave you especially useful advice. You know, maybe you're going to talk to auditors, and you're going to talk to other CFOs, and you're going to figure out if there's some project you could work on with somebody you could really learn from. Or you could ask somebody to start mentoring you. And you're not only looking for those direct connections, but you want to find the people who can help connect you and be those good connectors. And you also just want to look around and see who's on that same journey, and who are your peers, and who's your competition, and you know, is there someone who could be a good counterpart for you? And also, who can you bring up with you? And who should you be training or guiding as they grow their career? And so then, you know, just thinking quickly about what's next, and you know, we're not going to spend a lot of time on just how much of your career is still in front of you 5 years from now, and what are those milestones on the next horizon and the next one. Then you take all of that and you break it down into yearly goals, and then it becomes much more manageable. I think at this point it helps to start creating a chart or some kind of graph to visually organize everything. And then you can think about, how do you prioritize your timeline, right? You're thinking about, before you fill in your plan, how you're going to prioritize and how you're going to acquire new skills or learn new concepts, and if there's an order to it that makes sense. And when are you going to have time to increase your responsibilities, and what will you move around in your personal life to allow for that professional growth? And you're writing all of this stuff down. You know, you might need to free up time for continuing education, or do research, or have meetings. And then how long you need to stay in a given position before you've mastered it, and how long you should stay so you don't create an upheaval in the workplace. And that also goes back to that career progression piece, and think about what's that right timing for where you are right now. And those responsibilities that you're letting go of. You know, sometimes you just get so used to doing a task, or there's something relatively menial that you kind of like doing, and you end up creating this artificial career plateau for yourself. You just want to be really aware of it. You know, maybe you're the only person who really knows how to work some old information management system, and you should get over it, right? So then you're going to take all that stuff that you've just prioritized, you're going to just start breaking it down. You're going to put it into a timeline and think about the order that's going to serve you best, and what makes sense for you, and what the next credential should be, and how long it'll take, and you're going to add that to your timeline. You're going to think about who are the next 5 people you're going to talk to, and add that to your timeline. And so you're just sort of making space for your goals and creating targets so that you can assess your progress, and also breaking it down into much more manageable, bite-sized pieces, so it's just not so overwhelming. And then from examining where you want to end up and see what you want to do, you can break it down more. You can do 3 month goals or 6 month goals. You can set really easy goals. But by isolating these smaller mini goals, you're giving yourself room to screw up a bit, and you're also giving yourself room to adjust as things go and things change. So now you've set up your coming up years. And then you really want to set some checkpoints, right? Because you're not just going to like have a plan and then it's going to work. You want to figure out like, you know, what are those things that you're looking at and you're checking in to assess how it's going. And so you just want to mark your calendar for every 6 months and set aside time to check in. And these would be some of the things that you could talk about, you know, how much time have you actually spent on career development and whether you're on track and what else you need to do and what you've learned since your last check-in and how things have changed and what you've accomplished. And I do think that this is a good time, these 6-month check-ins, to just update your resume. Even if you're not going anywhere, it's like having a passport and you don't have to go anywhere, but you could. And so I think that's a really good thing, just to keep updating and keep on you so that you feel really active. And just check and see if the goal seems like what you still really want and if it still aligns with your motivated skills. And you know, those motivated skills change over time. But yes, I mean, that's a lot, right? Like, we just went through a whole 5-year plan. So just a really quick summary is you're going to identify what you want and why you want it. You're going to do a lot of research and talk to everyone to figure out who you should really be talking to and what you need to do beyond that. And then you're going to build out more specific job descriptions and snapshots of where you hope to be. You're going to take inventory against that snapshot, figure out what you need. And then you're going to prioritize your timeline so that you're getting everything you need in a reasonable amount of time, and you're setting 6-month check-ins to update your plan. Yeah, it's a lot. I'm so grateful that you guys have listened to me talk for this long. This is really my passion. I love this stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for talking to me about the type of work that could really energize you.
We have a couple minutes for questions if anyone wants to come up to the microphone. No? Okay. If when you have time, please log on to gfoanj.org and complete the survey. Thank you very much, Rita.
Thank you.